Welcome to Exposing Death Care, a podcast created to shine a light on the hidden, often dark realities within the funeral industry. I'm your host, Em, and each episode we bring you real stories from those who have experienced the best and worst of this hidden world. This podcast is a platform to expose unethical practices, harmful experiences, and shady dealings that have plagued grieving families, funeral staff, and the industry as a whole. By bringing these stories to light, Exposing Death Care aims to push for transparency, support those affected by trauma, and encourage necessary reforms in the way death care operates. By bringing these stories to light, Exposing Death Care aims to push for transparency, support those affected by trauma, and encourage necessary reforms in the way death care operates. From documentaries to dramatizations, what's fact, what's fiction, and what are they still not telling you? Listener discretion is advised. The stories shared in this podcast at times may be anonymous to protect the individuals involved. Thank you for listening, and we hope that by sharing these stories, we can work together to improve the death care industry for everyone involved. Season 3. Is it the premiere? Yes. Episode 1, Season 3. And today's episode is about Davis Mortuary in Pueblo, Colorado. I want to start by saying this clearly. This, as of recording, July 17th, 2026, is an active criminal case. The people involved are presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in court. What I'm sharing is based on public reporting, official statements, and regulatory documents that have been made available. But even with that legal caution, this case is deeply disturbing. Davis Mortuary was not just any funeral home. It was connected to public trust in a very specific way because one of its owners, Brian Cotter, was also serving as Pueblo County coroner at the time the investigation began. According to official reports, inspectors entered the funeral home in August of 2025 and discovered decomposing human remains inside the building. What followed was an investigation involving multiple agencies, families looking for answers, and allegations that some people may have been given cremated remains that were not actually their loved one. That is the kind of sentence that should stop all of us in our tracks. According to public reporting, Brian Cotter and Christopher Cotter were each charged with 161 counts. Those charges reportedly include 125 counts of abuse of a corpse, 9 counts of forgery, 18 counts of felony theft, and 9 counts of misdemeanor theft. The abuse of corpse charges are reportedly tied to the human remains found during the investigation, including bodies, cremains, bones, and containers of human tissue. The theft charges are reportedly connected to alleged issues involving pre-need funeral contracts, meaning money that families paid in advance for funeral services. Again, these are charges, not yet convictions. But the fact that charges of this scale exist in a funeral home case should make us all pay attention. Because when a family calls a funeral home, they're already in one of the most vulnerable moments of their life. They are trusting that funeral home with the person they love. They're trusting the paperwork. They're trusting the urn. They're trusting the person in the suit that says, we're going to take care of everything. And in death care, that trust should never be treated casually. So this episode is not about shock values. It is not about turning human remains into a headline. It is about accountability, consumer protection, and what's happening when the families are forced to grieve all over again because our system failed them. So today we're going to talk about what's been reported in the Davis Mortuary case with a little bit of behind the scenes. And a reminder that death care should never require blind trust. My guest today is A. This individual worked around Davis Mortuary, and they're here to share their story. Hi, A. Welcome to Exposing Death Care, the podcast.
Hi there. Thank you guys for having me.
How long have you been in the funeral industry?
So I have been in the industry for a collective of 4 years. I started my career out in Pueblo, Colorado during COVID. I then moved up to Denver, continued my career for another funeral home up here. And then I continued my work after a mental health break of a year. So a collective of 4 years.
I really resonate with the whole mental health break. I had to take a couple of years off myself for complete PTSD breakdown. So this is a very difficult industry to work in and for, especially that there's no lack of support for staff members and we're often worked to the bone. Am I right?
Yes, agreed. And the lack of mental health support is very astonishing, especially for us transporters. I feel like that is a very niche, I guess, community that is very overlooked, unfortunately.
So is that your primary job in the death care industry was doing transport?
Yeah, my primary job in the death industry was doing transport. I did have hopes and dreams to eventually open up my own funeral home. I was starting to dabble in cremation, but my main focus was transportation to help the families.
So you would go on removals and things like that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So in season 1, we had quite a few episodes that discussed dropping bodies. Have you ever obviously accidentally dropped a body?
Unfortunately, in my 4 years, there was only one case. It was a gurney incident. I have let my previous boss know, "Hey, this gurney is very well known to have accidents. It's need to be serviced," and I'm fortunate enough to know how to service gurney for the years that I've been in there. So it was equipment failure, unfortunately, but that was only once. Nothing happened to the loved one. The decedent was completely fine, thankfully.
They were probably strapped in, so it probably just,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
collapsed on one
drop
end.
down. Yeah, I had the first leg on the cot down, I was getting the second leg down, and it just failed and just completely went straight down.
My goodness. We've all been there. Any funeral professional worth their salt that says that they have never had a cot failure or coworker failure when moving the deceased, they're lying.
Agreed,
So,
agreed. It happens more times than we like to admit, unfortunately.
yeah, the minute you said that your cot failed because it needed to be serviced and that you had brought that to the attention of your employer, I immediately went back to an Instagram post that I made back in 2020. I was at a hospice facility and I took a picture of the wheels on my cot and I sent it to my boss at the time. And I was like, bro, see this cheap ass cot you bought? You probably should have invested in a Furno. We're going to
Yep.
need to get these wheels straightened out. And so when he didn't want to invest in the Furno, because he bought one of the cheap ones, and cots are several $1,000s, and they're yeah. So he bought one of the $1,000 models instead of the one of the more
Prominent.
well-known brands, and, yeah, so since he didn't do anything about it, I ended up posting it on the internet.
As you should.
Yeah, for real. That's probably why I'm, not very hireable because, like, I will hold you to it, like,
Yep,
do
same
what's right
here. I
for the
mean,
families.
you have to. I mean, the funeral industries, I mean, you're the first face of the funeral home, you know what I mean? You have
Mhm.
one bad incident, and that looks bad on the funeral home. Everything's going on, emotions are high, and one equipment failure is just not what you need on a long night.
Exactly. So, a little bit about Colorado for those that aren't aware. They've had some incidents that have happened over the last many years that have actually implemented more regulation, thankfully. That's the wild, wild west of funeral service. You could be working at McDonald's one day at the drive-through, and if you got hired to be an embalmer somewhere the next day without any schooling or education, you absolutely could do that. That's the way that the system worked out there. Thankfully, they are now implementing proper licensing to reflect what the other states are doing, and so the tides are turning. And a lot of this finally came to fruition with the return to nature funeral home debacle. But it sounds like Davis had their own issues going on. So, what was your experience with Davis Mortuary? What can you tell me?
Yeah, so I started working with Davis Mortuary through my first third party company. And as being a third party company, you work with a lot of funeral homes. And so we were pretty much contracted, I think, with all of them in Pueblo. Now, usually when you do a drop off for a decedent, let's say you just got the house call done, you bid farewell to the family, you say your condolences, you transport their loved one to the funeral home. You usually go in, they'll either have them on the embalming table or in the cooler. More times than not, it's the cooler. You log all their personal effects, you do all the legal paperwork, you leave them there on the cooler head block, and you go on to the next call and help the next family. I think the one thing that stood out to me the most with Brian and Chris Cotter was we ran around back, every funeral home you go around back. We unloaded the decedent and we got maybe, I'm not even kidding you, 5 steps within the door. He met us with a table and a body bag. And it wasn't like a very heavy duty body bag. It was like a thin one that hospitals used. And
Like the thin white plastic trash bags, basically.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
basically. And he would always meet us there, body bag open, and we would transport the decedent straight onto the table into the body bag, and then he would wheel them back. And it kind of took a few runs with Davis to understand that that wasn't right, that every other funeral home that we went to, we placed the decedent in the cooler or on the embalming table if they had services right away. And we always noticed this decomp is a very distinct there's nothing else like it, and there's a very distinct linger of decomp. And I just thought, "Oh, well, he's a coroner, maybe he just has a couple bad cases. It's Pueblo," you know what I mean? Pueblo's known to be a little more on the dangerous side as far as crime goes. And it was masked by this, 90s bathroom potpourri. It
Oh,
was disgusting. So getting, the smell of decomp and potpourri, it's offsetting. It definitely threw some red flags. Me and my boss talked about it, and obviously me and my coworkers did, but, for someone very green in the industry and very new, I didn't know better until obviously a year later, and then that's when the red flags started going off. I do remember there was only one time I was allowed back to where everything happened, and, I mean, it's like an old, I think, Freemasons building or something like that, so, the setup is really odd. You walk in, immediately splits into this Y. I don't remember how I got down there. It was really late at night. It was, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I was exhausted, and we go down this elevator, and the stink kind of permeates more in the air. I mean, it was you could smell it, and we go down, and we go past the embalming tables. Everything was it was this liminal space, very back rooms, very 90s. It was weird. The energy was off. It was not cool. I immediately wanted to go. I was like, immediately, no, this is not happening.
uh-huh.
And so we saw everything, and I believe I did pass that cardboard cutout. I feel like I do distinctly remember that, and I kinda got a weird vibe from it, because 'cause I'm a very sensitive person, but it just was this weird, I don't know, just heaviness is the best way I can describe it. The air was very heavy, it smelled horrendous, it was just weird, and it just never felt right after that one call. There was this one night, it was really, really odd. It was me and my new coworker, so I was training. I mean, I training as best as I could at that point. I was still pretty green, but knew my stuff. And, we go and we pick up the Cotter's van, and we go and do this one call because they were out to dinner. We get the decedent, we bring him back to Davis, and right there's Brian, right at the door with the body bag and the table, and I had enough. I was like, "This is fucking weird." I'm like,
Mhm,
there's, no way that this man is just doing this work all by himself. He's 60 years old.
mhm.
I'm like, "This
Yeah.
is weird." And then once he brought the decedent back, he said, "Wait, give me a second, wait." I'm like, "What is next?" He gave us a financial tip, each of us.
Okay. He
Yeah.
made you wait to give you a financial tip.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It
What
was weird.
was it?
$100 each.
Tip! Like
Yeah.
money. Well,
Money,
I
money,
thought he
money.
was gonna tell you about who to invest in the stock market with, and I was like, "What
Here,
the heck?"
that would have been weird, but I would have listened because stock market, I back then was okay. It's crap now. But no, he gave us each $100 tip. And I thought that was weird because in the funeral home industry, unless it's cultural, it's
Mhm.
weird. I've never
Yeah.
had a tip before. Maybe once, and it was like a Russian family, sweet as
Yeah.
pie. Probably one
Yeah.
of my favorite families that helped, but odd,
That
peculiar.
is crazy. So, like, in the almost 20 years I've been in death care, I've never gotten a tip on a removal. This is what's happened. So, like guest A said, tips are very uncommon in this industry, especially from colleagues, but I got my first tip in Waco, Texas, and the lady wanted me she gave me $100 and she told me to get some really nice shoes. And I'm sure that's because my shoes look like shit. But, that's what happens when you wear them out in the cemetery and everything else, and you're in, just a real world. And then I didn't get tips again until I moved to Seattle. That was always never expected, but so, so, so appreciated. But to have a colleague, it's like you're not delivering a pizza. Like,
Yeah,
this
it
is
was
just part of
weird.
the they pay a removal fee anyway, there's never been tips in that, so, you think it was like a bribe to, like, "Shh, don't say what you see here," or
I wanna say so because, like, I my facial expressions have no chill when I go to funeral homes. If
me
something
neither.
stinks, it's all over my face, okay? Like, I won't hide it, but obviously I'm respectful in front of families, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna show them that disrespect, but in the funeral home, if something stinks, I'm gonna say something stinks by my face, and, I
Mhm.
mean, I just every time I was around him, I was, visibly uncomfortable, you know what I mean? Very nervous. I mean, I'm 29, I was probably, like, early 20s back then,
Yeah.
and, so, like, going into it and it felt like hush money. It did. It felt like, "Hey, here's this. Thank you for doing this. Hopefully, you'll stay on my good graces," or, "Hopefully, this is enough to make you happy and keep coming back and, doing services with me and doing transports with me." It just felt like hush money, 100%.
Yeah, that's so weird. So, they used a third-party crematory. Did most of the people in your area use this third-party crematory? Was it like a mortuary service, or was it another funeral home?
So, I'm unsure to which crematorium they used out there. They used one crematorium for a couple companies.
So, what I'm leading to with this is that with the return to nature funeral home debacle, he wasn't paying for his cremations and they cut him off. And then we can only assume that he was trying to do alkaline hydrolysis in that building and that didn't work for him either. Only assume. Allegedly, assumptively. So he had no way to get rid of those bodies. How busy do you think the Pueblo Davis Mortuary was? Because obviously they didn't get stacked up with 200, but to keep a guy for 15 years makes absolutely zero sense to me.
It makes absolutely no sense. When I saw that, I mean, I would just well, but when the story first came out, I recoiled. I mean, I just like dropped my phone. Like that's
Mhm.
nuts. And to keep someone for 15 years, I mean, you already got the money from the family. You already did the fake service. There's no point to where I can think besides black market bone selling that makes sense to me.
Oh, that's right. Colorado does have an issue, and we go back to Sunset Mesa Funeral Home, where she was selling body parts and things like that. So if they did, some of the reporting is saying there were 24 bodies, 83 cremains, and 16 sets of bones and 2 containers of human tissue found.
Yeah,
So
and I mean,
and
it makes sense to do the black market because there's a story up here at one of the funeral homes I used to work at where there was a Confederate soldier who was buried in an above ground mausoleum. Now this is all hearsay. I'm not sure how factual this is. I never really cared enough to research it because I was so busy. But there was this Confederate soldier buried in an above ground mausoleum. I did pass a mausoleum. I did see where it's been broken in every time, but multiple people keep breaking in, teenagers mainly, and they sell the bones from that soldier. They've sold almost all of his bones. I think there's only like a leg and some other bones left of him. And I highly feel like a lot of that's unfortunately going on is the underground market with bone selling, tissue selling, organs, and stuff like that. Because unfortunately, it's a very big profitable market.
yeah, and we really learned we kinda saw a scope of that with what happened, Pennsylvania with the guy that was selling, bones and skulls that he had gotten from the cemetery. He's selling them on Instagram and Facebook Marketplace, and then we've got the Harvard scandal. He was connected to those people, I believe is no, a different guy was connected to them, and those people are now in prison for a little bit. But yeah, buying and selling of baby bodies, different things like that, all for curiosities, for your collection.
Disgusting. I mean, those are humans. You know what I mean? That's someone's loved one. That's someone's brother, sister, daughter, son.
Yeah, it is really bad. So that's good that we circled around to that. Could have been a possibility. They could have been selling bits and pieces of people, to vendors or who knows. Oh my.
Yeah, I don't want to think about that. That just gives me the heebies.
I'm sure we'll find out more as this case progresses, but the fact that they're out on bond, what in the wild, wild west?
Yeah, that disappoints me a lot, and I feel like they shouldn't have even been able to bond out.
So they actually like negotiated a lower bond to be able to get out, and they got it based on the fact that they had no prior criminal history. My ass, they had 15 years of doing stuff wrong at minimum.
Yeah,
15 years, but they haven't been proven guilty of that yet. So there's forgery charges, all kinds of things. This is going to be huge.
absolutely.
So the scope of harm is going to reach far beyond the number of people that we've first heard about in these headlines. I honestly hope that him also having the title of coroner makes many states or counties realize that maybe the coroner should have some actual education. For example, the last county that I worked in Washington, my former employer, who was nothing more than a social studies teacher before he went to mortuary school,
Oh god.
applied to be the coroner and gets paid $100,000 a year and has a funeral director degree, like an embalmer degree. Like that's it. And he just had to take like some course online or something in person to be a coroner. Like I feel like that should be to the level of a medical examiner, especially to get that kind of salary.
Yeah.
That they just hire any old rando funeral director that applies for it.
The good thing about Colorado, which you touched on, with them getting a little bit more strict with the licensing and stuff, I think what's happening in 2027 is you either need a signature from someone that you've worked with, which I'm a little conflicted about being grandfathered in. I feel like everyone should be
Yeah.
held to the standard that DORA is putting out by 27. If you don't have a degree, you're out of the industry.
Mhm.
I feel like that should have happened a lot sooner. I feel like return to nature should have been the eye opener, and I feel like everything should have been put into motion a lot sooner. Because I fully agree. I feel like coroners, like especially in Pueblo, it's really easy to become a coroner. It's
Mhm.
really easy, and you have a lot of responsibility, and you don't know who they are. I feel like if you're going into the industry, it just needs to be a lot more regulated. I'm not too sure how, but I mean, we deal with heavy stuff. I mean, loved ones pass away, trauma cases, there's active crime scenes, coroners go on. A lot of people are unfortunately have ill intentions and don't look out for your average coworker. And I feel like Colorado, just ethic wise, is going down this steep, steep, steep hill and they're just gonna crash and burn. And I mean, I had someone out of state say, I wish never to die in Colorado. And I looked at him,
Oh,
I go,
yeah.
why? He goes, do you see what you're talking about? He goes, do you see what you went through? And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, that's true. And that's sad because Colorado's such a great state. You know what I mean? And the death industry is just disappointing me every day. It's not that hard to be respectful towards decedents. It's not that hard to check the cooler log 3 times a day or call someone to maintenance the cooler to make sure that everyone's loved one is properly taken care of. It blows my mind the lack of accountability and the lack of, I guess, I hate the word passion, but passion for the industry. You know what I mean? People just
Yeah.
see it as another job to make quick money and while they're dead, who cares? And
Yeah.
that's just so far from the truth, and it's so disappointing, and just the whole Brian Cotter situation breaks my heart because Pueblo is such a small town.
Yeah.
Everyone knows everyone there, and so, like, I had some people comment on my TikTok, "Holy crap, my wife got her services done at Davis Mortuary. What do I do?" And I've had to help so many people from my comment section whose loved one unfortunately was taken there, and I'm not in the industry. I don't mind helping people, but I'm not in the industry. And someone who's seeing an outside perspective on it who's been inside, shame on you, Colorado. Shame on
Yeah.
you.
It's again and again and again, Colorado is letting down its residents. Sunset Mesa, Return to Nature, Davis, like how many other ones that are not on my radar right now?
Well, I'd have no problem naming a couple that I kind of were in the crapper too with Colorado and me. I mean, I have high
Yeah.
standards for funeral homes. There's a bunch that are just I mean, one in Pueblo, they have another branch up here in Denver. They didn't have refrigeration for probably the whole time that I worked there. And my boss just called me like 2 months ago. Hey, they finally got proper refrigeration. You're telling me since COVID they didn't have proper refrigeration. You're telling
Yeah,
me that.
no, and that's so much more common than the general public realizes. A lot of funeral homes don't have coolers there.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's why they push for embalming, or they'll embalm, they're willing to give me permission to embalm because they don't have space for a cooler. And
Exactly.
how hard is it to just like I've priced coolers before, like walk-in refrigerators that you see at a restaurant, like surplus places have them. It's like not that hard to get a cooler and you don't have to buy the really expensive ones, made by those in the industry.
No, you
Yeah.
don't. And, like, there's a funeral home out here. They're a house. It's a house, and they even managed to have 2 shelf coolers, 2 shelf coolers. Like, it blows my mind how difficult people make it out here. Colorado disappointed me so much. I changed my career from death care to automotive.
Yeah.
It's that bad out here.
Yep, that's happening to a lot of people that are getting into this industry with the best intentions to actually help people, and they're being run off by poor employers, poor experiences. Yeah, all of that, and it's really sad because they don't have a platform to share their story to get things to change, and that's why I created Exposing Death Care, was because, number 1, many of us have had these experiences and don't know that others of us are experiencing it. So
Mhm.
sharing it helps other people feel like they're not alone, from sexual harassment to mismanagement and mishandling of the decedents. Like, we kinda cover everything, and yeah, so,
And I have so
um
much more to tell. I mean, I would absolutely love to sit down again with you guys and be a part of the podcast because I have 4 years worth of stuff to tell you guys. And I've been itching for anyone to sit down and listen to me and who's been in the industry. Because, I could tell my mom this till I'm blue in the face, till I'm red in the face. I could tell my friends this. They don't care. They're
yeah.
just normal average Joes. But to have someone who's like, no, this isn't right.
I would love to have you back on again.
I love that. Absolutely.
Before we close it out, in our pre-talk before I started recording, you mentioned your experiences with reporting to DORA. Can you explain real quick for everybody listening that doesn't know, what is DORA and what happened?
Yeah, so DORA is the Department of Regulation Agencies, I believe. They kind of oversee the funeral home industry in Colorado. They make sure they go door to door to funeral homes. They do inspections. They check the coolers. They check equipment. They'll read your temperature log. They're the people to call if you see anything bad in the funeral home. Like if you have a funeral, your loved one unfortunately passes away, you see something that you don't like, and you try communicating with the funeral home, and you're just like, nah, this isn't right. This is who you call. DOOR is an amazing resource. I unfortunately still haven't heard back from them, but I am no stranger to bothering people. So definitely will call them, but they're amazing. I mean, they're the people who have kickstarted Everyone's Gotta Have a License by 27. Great company, great organization.
What were they doing though before? Like, how come they weren't getting into funeral homes and inspecting them prior to all this happening? Or did they really just get more proactive after the return to nature?
I think they got more proactive after Return to Nature. I think COVID really kind of messed everything up with visits and stuff like that. I think they're now just getting back in the swing of things after recouping from COVID. Again, this is all hearsay. I'm not too sure, you know what I mean? But I feel like Return to Nature kind of kicked their butt in gears. I do want to know why they have been quiet, though. I've had that question for them for a little bit. Again, they haven't answered me back. But like I said, no stranger to pestering people. I will pester them till I get an answer. But I think Return to Nature has just kind of kickstarted everything, especially with Brian and Chris being coroners. I
Hmm.
really feel like that put their ass in gear because that's a big whoopsie.
Yeah, it is. Hopefully, these dudes are held accountable for their actions and the families see justice.
I'm hoping so too.
Yeah, because hearing their stories that they're sharing with the media is really sad.
It breaks
Like, to
my
think
heart.
that your father has been laid to rest 15 years ago and he's hanging out in some guy's back closet, like, for real.
It's despicable. Absolutely
Yeah.
despicable.
Well, thank you for your time today. We really do appreciate you here.
Yeah, not a problem.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Exposing Death Care, the podcast. I truly appreciate your support and the courage of those who have contributed to or shared their stories with us. If you or someone you know has something to share, we encourage you to reach out. You can remain anonymous, and your story could prevent future harm. You can leave comments, ask questions, or provide feedback by connecting with us on social media at Exposing Death Care on TikTok and Instagram, The Modern Mortician on YouTube, and all streaming platforms. Like, follow, and share. Podcast music titled Exit Strategy by Enlia.